Good afternoon. So today we're going to talk about this rack that I had custom built that goes into this truck. We're going to talk about some of the mounting points and how it mounts using the Ram factory tow. And we're going to talk about a couple things that I added onto this that makes it super easy to get in and out. So first thing we've got to do, I have a tonneau cover. I love my tonneau cover. It makes me able to use the back of the truck without worrying about people getting into it, at least from a conceptual point of view. It also makes it much easier if things don't blow out, but we have to take the tonneau cover off. So the first thing we have to do is have to take those 6 mounts off. I use this handy dandy drill right here with a drill bit, and it works super quick. Some people think it's difficult, but it actually is super quick. So let's get those off. So once we have all 4 of those off, we come over to here, and these 2 side rails just slide out just like that. And over on this side, they just slide out. And it's interesting because from having them on the truck so long, you can see there's a mark on the rails. That mark's actually extremely useful for putting them back on. All right, so once I get the tonneau cover off, I've got just this little strap that goes from my shed here that I stand it up against. That just holds it in place. That way we do get some winds here, so if we get any wind or anything, it doesn't go anywhere. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to scoot it over in front of the truck. It's pretty light. We'll just walk it and get it over in front of the truck's tailgate. So one of the things you can see is the wheels like to go in, especially this one over here on the driver's side. So typically what we have is the chain that's up there going across the handles, and it keeps the wheels pulled in. So once we have it in the truck, all we've got to do is pull this lever slightly forward, undo that hook, and then it'll set that side down. Then we'll repeat the exact same thing, push that lever forward, undo that hook, and then that'll sit down, and it'll sit down in there. So let's talk about this a little bit. So we got these handles and these puck inserts from eTrailer.com. No sponsor or anything. They were the only ones I could find. These are replacement pieces for the Kurt 5th wheel that goes in here because it goes into each of these 4 wheels. And between the 4 of them, it can handle a 20,000 pound trailer behind us. So I'm pretty sure we're good to go with that holding about 2,000 pounds. So to get this lined up, you can see kind of in there what we have to do is we have to aim each one at about a 45-degree angle out. So that one's set. And so this one will aim about there. This one will aim about there. And then finally, this one will aim about there. So once you have that set, all you've got to do is move it around slightly and the rack will fall in. And just like that, all of them are in. So to lock them in, all you got to do is point them at each other. They go pretty easy. Point them all to the middle. And then what I end up doing is I take a bungee currently and I connect that one to there and that one to there. So previously I had a smaller winch mounted on this cross member that came off the roller for loading. It was just too low of an angle and it put way too much stress on that. So we ended up turning it around and putting a snatch block up there, which worked extremely well. It was just a little difficult to deal with. So the final iteration that we did was we actually put a hitch receiver up there, and I put a Badlands 5000 winch up there, which easily pulls the RZR up. It's at a better angle for going up as well. The other thing I want to do eventually is with these, rather than having them turned in, they can also lock at a 45-degree angle out, which would put them out to there. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to cut this here and then re-weld it at an angle so that this can rotate to where it needs to, and then we'll just put a little pin right there, which is how the Kurt system has it, with a little keeper, so that will lock and go there. It's just right now it doesn't lock all the way because the handle really needs to come out to about there to get it to properly lock. So once we get those cut and re-welded at an angle, here I'll show you, it needs to go out there and you can see it's there. So if we cut them and bring them in, then all four of those would be out of the way. It would help so if we put stuff in here, because right now with this and the way these connect in, I can still put stuff on here, it doesn't matter, but it still is kind of in the way. All right, as promised, I'm gonna do another video on actually loading the side-by-side. I did a previous one on how I get the rack in and out of the truck. So we'll go over a couple things. These are the Titan ramps, 1,500 pounds per ramp, so 3,000 combined. A lot of mixed reviews on them. I haven't had any issues yet. The big thing that happens is the welds here, because that's where all your stress points are. One of those welds usually ends up giving and it buckles. So I'll talk about that, how I dealt with that. So up here, what we did was we ended up putting these hooks in. I left this one out so we could see a little bit better. So I just got these little closed hook bolts. And so what they do is it sits up on that arm that we built. So there's one without it that you can kind of see. And I just take the straps and I strap them down and around. So that just prevents the ramps from spitting out. Before they were on there, they would just sit there, and first time I tried to load, it just spit the ramps out and we were sitting on the rack with the side-by-side, which was not fun. All right, so we got both ramps up. One of the other things I did that I'll show at a later time is I just took a couple 2x4s, made a notch, and then what we'll end up doing is just setting that kind of in there, something like that. It's really no big deal. The main point of it was just so that when these flex, and you'll see they do flex a lot, it can just absorb some of that so that the ramps are less likely to buckle. All right, so we got the battery hooked up, got the winch connector. I use the wired one here, so pretty standard one that just sits on some zip ties there. So everything's set up. Eventually I will get a couple of the Anderson connections and have power running from the truck. Right now I only use this a handful of times, so this seems to work good. And also, now that I made the winch so that it's in a receiver, I can take the winch and this battery, put it on the truck or put it on the back of the side-by-side or whatever, and actually have a fully functioning winch. We got the winch up. So the first thing we do is we take the winch from the RZR, and that goes up there. I need to build I'll build a point up in the front, maybe slightly higher so these two don't collide. But then we took the steel cable off the winch. It goes under the RZR and we connect it to the back loop. So we have dual winches. We can use the winch on the RZR. I've got wireless for it. And we've got the winch on the rack, which I have a wired for. Funny note, I had a 2500 and the wireless remote, while they didn't operate each one, did conflict, probably on the same frequency, and when you push one, the other would stop. So that's why we go with a wired one on the truck and the wireless one on the rig. All right, so key on, we are in neutral. Actually, you don't need the key on, you just need to be an accessory. And so then what we're gonna do is we're going to slowly winch up. We'll use one then the other. Primarily I use that one, but then I can use the one on the rig as well, and we'll just run them together. So we're gonna winch up, and one of the things, if you're not level, which we're slightly off level, that happens at some point is the tires want to turn. So sometimes you have to have somebody in here to keep the tires straight. So you can see at this point, we originally didn't put these in loose. We want the ramps to flex down to where they catch. So now we've got enough weight on the actual ramps to flex them down, and we're just slowly creeping up. It's really hard to do. Normally I have two hands and I can run each controller simultaneously. Right now it's a little more difficult by myself, but you can see the whole point of the two winches is just safety. So if something was to happen to one winch, the rig wouldn't go flying or anything like that. Each winch could get the side-by-side mostly up there by itself. They're both pretty strong. Until I get the bracket made for the front, the winch on the side-by-side itself can only get so much. And you also see how it pulls it down. So sometimes it's better to let that winch do a lot of the work. You can kind of see that tire over there is probably a little this side. It's pretty easy. You can just grab the tire and you can actually steer them pretty easy. So just as we load, we just kind of grab a tire and load it on. Once the tires actually hit this rail right here on the inside, they'll ride on the inside and go all the way up. So here we are looking from the underside. You can see we're no longer able to use the winch on the side-by-side because it would just pull it straight down. And at some point it stops on this roller as well because it's just connected to the back. So and you can see the tires, the way this is set, we built it so they run right on the inside and it'll just guide itself up there. One of the advantages of the side-by-side winch now being a back pull is that as we pull the side-by-side up more, that one will restrict it from going too far forward. So if we happen to be loading on a downhill slant, as we finish the loading process here, and the back tires are almost there. You see right there, see what happened there? The front winch catches and it keeps it from going too far forward. So at this point, it's pretty much up there. This is where we put the back tires. You can see we built a plate here and a plate here. And so the back tires basically sit right at that plate. There's D-rings welded that we'll show here in a second. And up there to be able to put the front tires on. So once we get the tire nets on, we'll loosen that winch a little bit. We just don't want it to hit the roof. And we just leave these hanging so they don't actually support the rig while going. You can also see we had to lower these handles. Normally if you see there, the handle would be in, the screw would be in that handle, but it was just barely catching the razor. So we just lower those for now, put the screw back in. It's still easy to move and works great. So first thing I do is I take one of the ramps off and I put a tire bonnet on this side. Pretty easy to add on. We just use an axle strap here because I couldn't put a D-ring there because the ramp sits on it. So quick and easy way to get this one. Honestly, once this one's tied down, we're good to go. I use my handy dandy little ladder here. It makes it super easy to get up there and attach those. So then once we have a tire tightened, what I like to do is just let that out slightly. Want to make sure it's not going to hold the rig down anywhere, but we also want to make sure it's not clanking on stuff because that's annoying. And then we'll do the same thing to this one here. Make sure they're both just loose. So then we come up here, we put the RZR in park after we've ratcheted down two tires. That way it's good to go and we're not putting a lot of stress on the transmission. And also the custom axo that this has gives you lots of grip so you can grab things to be able to climb up and down on this. So one of the other interesting things to point out is we always strap to the back on the top. That way we ratchet down, and using the tire as a fulcrum, it actually lifts the front slightly and supports the front. So most of the weight is actually right here in the back where we've got plenty of structural support, and then that lifts it up and supports it. So while the tire's there, there's a lot more weight actually behind the front tire than actually over the front tire. That gave us the option to not have to have a full bar that goes across, even though in the future we're probably going to build somewhere up here and then back down to support those, and also give me some place to winch use the side-by-side to winch off the winch on the rack doesn't work. All right, well, side-by-side's all loaded on the rack, just got to connect the trailer up. Hope you enjoyed the videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we appreciate everything you do for us.